You're saying targets from
Targets. The civilians won't be targets.
These are Israeli proposed safe. This is an Israeli proposed safe area.
What we are working on with the Israelis, and we've had conversations about this in the last 24 hours, is about what is the best way to implement protection for civilians in southern Gaza. And we continue to work through those details. I don't have any announcements to make about where we might land, but it's a conversation that's ongoing with the Israeli government right now.
Okay, and then just more broadly, because we're all aware of the foment inside the administration and inside Washington and inside the country about what the policy is. But these are three prominent people, including two of which, Kathy Russell and Amy Pope, had senior positions at the White House. Kathy Russell is still, as far as I understand, extremely close to both the president and the first lady. And then Cindy McCain, who everyone knows who she is. Is it problematic for you guys at all that you have these three people who are, the heads of important UN agencies who are disagreeing with the administration's policy?
Again, I don't necessarily agree that they are disagreeing with our policy. We want to see that whatever protections exist for civilians in southern Gaza, that there are areas that are protected from attacks from Israel, from Hamas, from Palestinian Islamic Jihad, from anyone else operating there. So we would agree with that notion, and it's something we're working with the Israeli government to try to implement and figure out the details of now.
So the administration does not support the creation of a safe zone.
We create.
I thought that was one of the main
we do want to establish areas that are safe for civilians in southern Gaza, but working out the details of that when you have an armed conflict going on is complicated, as it always is in the middle of armed conflict.
Okay, so you're not particularly concerned?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Related, but not totally. Of course, there's the operations in Al-Shifa Hospital. There are also operations surrounding another hospital, which I think the name was Ali Arab. There's been strikes on the Jordanian military hospital in Gaza. All hospitals, is it still your understanding that there would be Hamas commands in all those hospitals? And more generally, I repeat, is it a legitimate thing to hit or strike or attack or what have you hospital?
Let me say a few things about that. First, just as a matter, we never said that there were command posts in all of the hospitals. We said that it is our assessment that there are command posts in hospitals. We did make a specific assessment as it related to Al-Shifa, but we did not say that there are command posts in every hospital in Gaza. But there are command posts in hospitals there, and there are tunnels underneath hospitals there. Let me speak first of all to the Jordanian medical personnel that were injured outside a field hospital in Gaza. We are deeply concerned that they were injured. The Jordanian government has done incredible work establishing this field hospital and other medical facilities in Gaza. We think they're essential and they must be protected. That work must be allowed to continue, and we reiterate the obligations under international humanitarian law for all parties to take feasible precautions to reduce the risk of harm to civilians, and we urge all possible steps to mitigate civilian harm. As it relates to hospitals, as we said before, we don't want to see hospitals struck from the air. We understand that Hamas does continue to use hospitals as places where they embed their fighters. It's places where they have tunnels running underneath. And so it can be appropriate for Israel to conduct limited military operations with respect to hospitals, but we want to see them do it in a way that minimizes civilian casualties. We do not want to see hospitals in the middle of firefights. We do not want to see patients put at risk. It's why we've called for the evacuation of hospitals when appropriate and said we would support international humanitarian organizations evacuating patients so they could be put out of harm's way. This is, I think as I said before, this is such a difficult issue because two things can be true at one time. One, we want to see hospitals protected. Two, Hamas is operating outside of hospitals, and Israel has a right to try to attack Hamas and hold them accountable and keep them from launching new attacks. So how do you square those two things? The way we try to square it is to say, number one, no airstrikes on hospitals, and number two, if Israel is going to conduct limited military operations in hospitals, as they're doing with respect to Al-Shifa now, that they try to do it in a way that minimizes civilian harm, and so they only are putting in jeopardy Hamas fighters and not civilians.
Okay.
Said, as is true every day, I will I always come to you. So go ahead.
Just to follow up on that one specifically, so you say no airstrikes on hospitals. Well, there apparently was one on the military Jordanian hospital in Gaza. So you say you're deeply concerned. You don't want to see hospitals struck from the air, etc. But you condemn that strike.
I'm going to say we are concerned about those reports. We're concerned that hospitals hit, and we do not want to see airstrikes against hospitals. We want to see hospitals protected.
So you don't condemn.
Would the U.S. support establishing safe zones?
I will. I'll come to you.
In northern Gaza?
I know you can follow, and when I come to you, you can follow up on that and whatever else. You'll get as many as you need.
Would the U.S. support establishing safe zones in northern Gaza for things like field hospitals? I mean, you can't evacuate these people and put them, where they aren't going to be safe. So if you're calling for patients to be evacuated, field hospitals would de facto be the best option, but if they're not safe either, I mean, how is it approaching this?
I don't want to speak to try to prescribe specific proposals from the podium when this is an ongoing conversation we are having with the government of Israel and with international humanitarian organizations who themselves are trying to figure out the best way to implement this in what is an active conflict zone. I will just reiterate the general principles, which is we do want to see places established that civilians can be safe. We want to see places established where patients can be safe and patients are protected, and that's what we're in conversation every day with the government of Israel about, and with the international humanitarian organizations. And I will just repeat, as I've said the other day, remember that it is Hamas that is putting all of these people in harm's way. It is Hamas that continues to operate inside hospitals as they have done inside mosques and schools and other civilian infrastructure. It is the Hamas that is at the root of all this problem. That is creating such a difficult challenge for the international community and for the Israeli military. So I don't have any illusions that Hamas is going to change its practices, so that puts an added burden on Israel to conduct their operations in compliance with international humanitarian law, and we expect them to meet those obligations, and we have conversations where we make that clear with them all the time.
Would you support safe zones established in northern Gaza, because to this point, you've only mentioned southern Gaza?
Again, I'm not going to get ahead of the conversations that we're having with international humanitarian organizations about what the best way is to protect civilians from harm. It is an ongoing conversation, and I don't think I should try to prescribe where those conversations will land from here.
You said you're pressing Israel to conduct their operations within the confines of international humanitarian law. Have they done that to this point? Does the U.S. assess they've done that?
Again, we have not made any assessment that they have violated international humanitarian law, but we constantly are monitoring facts as they develop.